afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn, a partnership series between the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights and the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. I am Kyla Hannington with the Office of Human Rights. With me today as co-hosts are Tiana Davis, also from the Office of Human Rights, and Dr. Audrey Lau with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And we have a special guest co-host. Today's Lunch and Learn also includes Joe's Movement Emporium as a partner, and we are delighted to be joined by Camille Kashaka from Joe's. I'm going to take a moment to introduce her to all of you. She currently serves as the managing director for Joe's Movement Emporium and Creative Zootland, and she's excited to contribute to the broad and powerful community-focused cultural and artistic impacts of these institutions. She's the former executive director of Motor House in Baltimore, Maryland, interim managing director of Hallelujah Theater in Memphis, Tennessee, and director of the Anacostia Arts Center in Washington, D.C. Camila received her BFA from Howard University in Theater Administration and her master's from American University in Arts Management. And it's with this specific blend of cultural, artistic, and professional experience that she hopes to add to the eclectic cultural ecosystem of Prince George's County. And we're super excited to have Joe's with us today. This is part of our Freedom Stories initiative. We've got a many-year partnership between our office, the library system, and Joe's in this Freedom Stories initiative. And so, Camille, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we are thrilled to be talking with Amy Hansen, who's the author of this gorgeous new children's book, Wanda Hears the Stars. This Lunch and Learn was actually rescheduled from August 19th, which was the book's publication date. Wanda herself was scheduled to join us, but due to some technical and technological issues, she was not able to be with us in person on screen. We did reschedule for today, though, to allow us time to do an email interview with her. So we're going to share her words with you today, in addition to talking to Amy live right now. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce you to Amy, who is the award-winning author of more than 35 books, most of them about science. She and Wanda met when Wanda first arrived at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Amy was astounded when she tried listening to Wanda's data, and the two friends decided to write a book together to inspire all young readers to find a path to success. And Amy lives with her family in Maryland. Amy, thank you so much for your graciousness in being rescheduled and for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to share this book, and the excitement, is still there for me to talk about it. So.
Awesome. Well, it is just an absolutely wonderfully beautiful book. I mean, I hope viewers are getting a sense of it just even right now. Yeah. To get us started, would you take a moment to just discuss the book, how it came to be, a little bit about Wanda?
So as you said, I met Wanda when she started at Goddard as an intern, and she worked for my husband. And we had dinner parties for his interns and for some of his colleagues. So every summer we'd have people over, and Wanda's energy just, fills the room. And at the moment that she started, I didn't really believe that you could listen to stars. I mean, my husband worked in sonification. I understood that for those of us who are not in astrophysics, the easiest example is a heart monitor, that you hear the beep, 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 and then if something's going wrong, you hear it faster or slower. So that's what we think of. And so the concept of understanding stars by listening to them is just phenomenal to me. And I didn't know if she could do it or not, but it wasn't really my job to figure that out. I am a science writer. That's what I do. And so when she started succeeding, it was like everybody has to know about this, and because it not only is she amazing, but the science or the distance in the science, the doing it slightly different but getting to the same point is amazing to me. And I wrote a book much earlier called Touch the Earth, where my audience was mostly kids who are visually impaired, and it's used in schools. And I realized I had to write differently, but to write about this, you also have to write differently. You have to, because most of us have the sight as the first way that you're describing something. And so I wanted sound to be the first way I was describing something. with this. I'm not sure I actually answered your question.
What? That was great. It was,
but it's.
Let me say this. We did ask Wanda what the book meant to her, so maybe what I'll do is I'll jump in and just share what Wanda thinks about the book. And I know we have a link that we're going to put in because she references something. So what we asked her is, please tell us what the book means to you. And Wanda shared that the Royal Academy of Science International Trust, and we'll get that link for all of our viewers in the chats where you're watching, under its project Science in Braille, is moving forward multisensorality as a human right. This book, which is based on our human right to equality, comes to help us to heal the huge fracture monosensorial performances have caused in scientific discoveries. And beyond it, will help us to guarantee that anyone with the determination to do will be able to do. That's what I thought was a beautiful answer, and also had really wonderful multisyllabic words that I had to look up. It was a wonderful answer.
Can I just highlight what did she say that our human right to equality comes to help us heal heal the huge fracture monosensorial performances have caused in scientific discoveries. I just like that, the idea of multisensoriality.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful. As a human right, I just wanted to highlight that. There's no question here. It's just, yes, and why aren't we thinking this way?
Yeah.
Amy, you've known Wanda a long time, and we see at the end of the book, there's a long friendship and history here. We heard a little bit about it in your bio, but can you tell us more about how you connected and your friendship?
Right. So I, when she started coming over for dinner parties, and Wanda came to Goddard and came to work for NASA for 8 summers. So she wasn't just a one summer intern. She was there frequently. So we would see her, but you could share the first 3 slides. This is when her mother came to join us, and Lucy and Wanda and I are at the Goddard Space Flight Center, Visitor Center, and they actually had a display of some of the work she'd been doing. So that's why it was important to come. And you could push the button and hear the sounds. Then next slide. We went to visit her in Puerto Rico when my boys were little. That's my son in the orange pajamas. We're doing Easter egg hunts because it happened to be Easter vacation. And Wanda's family, I don't know if no one in Puerto Rico or just her family had never done an Easter egg hunt. So all of Wanda's nieces learned how to hunt eggs because of us. And then the next one is she's cutting open a coconut, and remember, she can't see where the knife is. This just shows her energy that she is not going to be left behind if somebody says that they've never tasted a brand new coconut, which was me saying that. She got the coconut and she was going to open it, and it was very fun. She did not hurt herself, but her mom did come and take the knife away. And then I went to visit her in Scotland. Next slide. So there we are in front of Loch Ness, and not looking for the monster at all. And she was doing her PhD at Glasgow at that point. And she's come to other dinner parties here. And I've gone to visit her in other places. It's one of those wonderful friendships where we don't need to be in the same place for a long time, and we still really enjoy each other. She just has so much energy. She is a little bit daunting when she knows where she wants to go. She walks very fast. So even though I'm supposedly leading, I'm kind of being dragged along on the sidewalk. And I assume I will see her. She travels all over the world, so I can't keep up, or haven't kept up yet, but I will try.
Fantastic.
Amy, I was wondering, because we've talked about your relationship a little bit. Could you talk about the book itself? What is the book? What is this book about? We do not feature picture books very often, and so this one is very special to us. So could you just give us a little preview?
Well, it is on the basic level, in writer's terms, a hero's journey. That she starts out with a want of she wants to study the star. She discovers she wants to study the stars. They're not right next to her because of the rainforest. So she doesn't see them until she's older than most kids who have seen the stars. She's 7 or 8 when she actually is out, when the stars are out, and sees them. And then she really wants to make this hers. And so on a very basic level, we're starting the hero's journey of, I want to do something, I'm working toward it. And then she hits the horrible piece of going blind because of the diabetes, and how she actually made other plans in her life that didn't get into the book, of how she would support herself when she didn't have her sight. And it made her very sad, but she needed, to make a living as well. And then her friend Emilio shows her, or takes her to listen to his project, which is listening. He has a receiver that is getting the radio waves from Jupiter and from the sun. So the project is called Radio Jove. It's run out of Goddard, and one can make these receivers, and listen to the radio waves that are always out in space. This isn't something he's inventing or, accidentally came on. People have known about them for a long time. And that just energized her to find a way to the stars, to find a way to her original dream, because she suddenly understood that she could use her ears still and do the research that she wanted to do. Even though most of us would think of, looking at stars, you either look up or you look through a telescope, you're looking, but actually all the data comes as numbers, as zeros and ones back from the satellites. So there's no reason it can't be just put into sound as easily as it can be put back into a picture. Mm-hmm. Our brains are just ready for the pictures. So yeah, it's both the hero's journey and the science, and the fact that it's nonfiction, and that she had to also learn English while she was going blind, which is just, she amazes me. And
yeah, we actually asked her about this too. We asked Wanda, please tell us more about your first time hearing the stars, because that's an experience most of us don't get to have. What was that like? And she responded, my first data set was light. I was not monitoring a star. I was monitoring gamma ray intensities. And she actually has a TED Talk about this. So we'll get a link to the TED Talk in the chat right now where you're watching as well. She said, I come from being in need of a third person to explore, to then be able to explore by myself autonomously, independently, based on scientific creativity. The first time I heard measurements acquired by satellites translated into sound, it brought light, it brought things alive in my life. I was able to explore from my life the interstellar medium. I never imagined it was sound as it did. For nature to be as wonderful as it is, it is filled with many events simultaneously occurring, non-linear, non-stationary. I was able to get in touch with the unexpected and find things that by nature would be blind to the human eye, even with artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Right. So knowing the sound, so data sets explored with both sound and sight we get more information. We have more understanding. So it's just a piece that multiple people should be, many groups should be using. It's just not often in the front of our heads as we're talking about things.
Yeah.
So, Amy, I want to ask you two questions. One, what was it like for you listening to Wanda's data? And then here's the word salad. Here's where I think it's really fascinating that when you think of physicists, their whole job is to observe and make conjectures, derive theories from those observations, and how like they are supposed to be the ones thinking outside of the box. And then having a situation like this, like Wanda's, where you have to create a or you have to utilize the technology that approaches observation from different senses, right? How amazing is it? And like amazing and tragic that Wanda's disability is actually like a superpower for an astrophysicist.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've already lost the first question.
Well, what was it like for you listening to Wanda's data?
Yes. Well, my mind is often blown by just looking at huge data sets of stars. If you look at the Hubble pictures or at this point, the JWST pictures, my mind goes, whoa. So understanding as I'm listening to it that wow, I'm hearing different stars go by, ding, 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 is I can't hold on to it. And I would have to learn a whole new language. It would be like becoming a composer, which I'm a mediocre musician. I'm fine, but I'm not a professional level musician. But I think for people who think in music, it would be much closer to where they are in the first place. And I think some of the issues for using this to get to your second question in the scientific community will come from the fact that you worked so hard to understand the one sense, using the one sense of your sight to do it. And then to add on is a very small group of people that are already there by the time they're finishing their PhDs. So it's just a logistics issue, not people saying this isn't worthy as much as there's so much to do. How can we step back and learn something that's basically like learning another language? To really understand what you're doing, you have to have studied it for 10 years or more, and people aren't going to go back in their degree to say, oh yeah, I'll go back and learn that other technique, because so if it could be learned earlier while you're still in school, that would be cool.
I also have two questions for you. The first one is, I would like to know how or why you and Wanda decided on a children's book as opposed to like a memoir.
I write children's books. That is, I think I have one adult book and one play published, which is a children's play actually. So that's where I'm starting. I did actually mean, as we were starting, for this to be for older kids, for mid-grade, which for people outside of the children's book world, that means 4th to 7th graders, maybe 3rd to 7th. This is an older picture book that certainly could be read that high, but it is a picture book. And the reason it was a picture book is that I had to put the sound in. And sound, using onomatopoeia, is very much a picture book piece. And then also, I just started writing and it came out short. because sometimes when you're writing and it works, then you don't question it too hard. And it was not a middle grade book in that sense. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's just magic, the writing happens. It doesn't happen all that often, but yeah.
Yeah. You also talk about spending time with Wanda at NASA Goddard. And you mentioned, what was the quote? You had to train your brain to learn what she was learning. Can you talk a bit about what that means and like what you learned?
So I want it to be music. I want to be listening to it with a prediction of, oh, I'm in the key of C. If that, for musicians, that would mean no sharps, no flats. And I would know what the next note in the scale is when I'm listening. And so the notes will come in at that level. But it's not music, it is data. And so it's not supposed to be predictable in the same way that listening to a concerto is predictable because it's a format. But it's very hard to listen to sounds, especially when you're setting up sonification. I'm going to back up for a second. You choose essentially a palette of voices so you'll have chimes. I'm looking at my porch and I have wind chimes. Or you have voices going, or you have brass instruments or something else, but they're not playing a concerto that's predictable. They're playing what is there. And so I had to really work at not letting my brain say, oh, I know what the next note is, because it doesn't. And really, because if you think you know what it is, then you're not hearing what it actually is. And that's actually really hard to do. So I am very impressed with the people. And also, I didn't know how I would record it. I mean, Wanda has various systems of, a clicker and using a pad, a keyboard to record what she's actually hearing. But if I were doing it, I'd have to have my eyes open to say, oh, there it is, So.
I'm just thinking that I would really struggle with that. I'm grateful for your explanation, because as you were talking, I realized how much I automatically anticipate what's coming next. And I was going to say, I like to anticipate, but I'm not sure that I like it or I don't like it. I just do it. And so what it would be like to train yourself to silence that anticipation, that must be enormous.
Yeah, it's very hard. Another friend of mine, Robert Alexander, uses sonification to study the sun, and he is also a composer. So he was able to be listening to the data of it was gases coming off the sun, and he could hear, because oxygen was assigned the note A, but there was very, very little oxygen, and there's a huge amount of gas coming off, or plasma coming off the sun. I'm not sure if it was gas or plasma, but but since he could hear it, he could identify it and then say to his colleagues, it's there, and they could shift all of the data around to actually see the data that he was talking about. But because there's just so much, they were missing things. So that was an example of this is adding a huge amount of, can add more to the science that people didn't notice that the oxygen was there. It's just because he was listening to it, he could hear it.
I think it's really interesting the way you talk about it, because when I think of space and I think of science fiction, and there's always these grandiose soundtracks and really loud music, and to think of this as not what we would be hearing is a little sad. But also, I guess, how new is this? Like, how new is this listening? And because I think it's really neat, and because I just assume that like space has a sound check? Because,
yeah. Well, and to make sure I say this out loud, there is no sound in space. If you were in space, you could not hear anything because sound does not travel. Radio waves travel, and they've known that from the 50s, but you need a receiver on Earth to collect them and then hear them. And so the radio waves were discovered in the 30s, but really worked on in the 50s, I think. And somebody, I'm sure, in the chat will correct me. But using sonification to study large data sets. And sorry, I'm going to back up one more time. The radio waves from the sun and from Jupiter are called audification because you're not changing anything. They are just coming in and you're playing them. The sonification is taking the data from the satellites and assigning sound to each of the different pieces that the data has. So sonification for large data sets, I'd say, is in the last 20 years. You needed fast computers, you needed big, Hubble, which I know is more than 20 years ago, but you needed that size of data sets to be interesting. And yeah, we were in London for a meeting on sonification when my boys were little. I date everything by how old my kids were. So they were 6 and 8, I think. So I think people were working on it then, but I didn't actually go to the meeting. I took my kids around London. My husband went.
Wow. That is a lot. I'm just thinking about sometimes, like, I hear about science writing and I'm like, I like to write. I could be a science writer. And then I'm listening to you and I'm like, no, I definitely cannot be a science writer.
Yes, you could.
I do not know enough. I do not know enough. We asked Wanda a question about mentorship that I want to share. Really, what we asked is, tell us about mentorship. How have you been positively impacted by mentors? And also ways that you are maybe helping those that are coming after you through advocacy, support, and mentorship. And Wanda responded and she said, I don't know that I do advocacy work. I do support anyone who wants to do data analysis fully. And she goes on to say that in July 2025, she taught a course on environmental robotics in Puerto Rico. And she says people with different learning disabilities learned robotics, mounted programming, Raspberry Pis, took data, analyzed it, and reported results of exploration of different ecosystems around Puerto Rico. This was the first of its kind in Puerto Rico and in the world, as people who had reached only the 5th grade, some never learned to read or do any schooling, with different combinations of developmental conditions combined with sensorial deprivation, were doing mainstream science, acquiring data, analyzing it. They achieved results. They came to the program, learned it, performed, and now expressed by many of them, they want to continue working in science. For them to succeed learning and get to professionally work in science, they need to do transitions through other skill acquisitions and to the professional stage. These transitions need to adapt to their learning and performance styles, and those transitions need to support and enhance the ways they perform at their own maximum capacity. And this summer, we demonstrated that it was possible. I wanted to highlight this. And I think, am I right, Amy, that maybe you have?
Right. The last slide shows that.
Let me get those up here. So we have.
Oh, that's when she was the one on the left with the boys. She was working in South Africa, and the one on my right was in Ethiopia. Is that she was. So I find it funny when she says she doesn't mentor, because she really does. She goes around the world showing different communities what she can do, and she brings transmitters. She shows them tactile learning in ways that aren't used very often. So the next one is the Puerto Rico more recently. And where they're touching what looks like a map. That's they're learning the different colors of it was actually a picture of a galaxy. I don't know what galaxy. And they're learning what colors are in that galaxy by the circuit board on top.
Mm.
I'm not sure if it says red or if it beeps twice or what so you can learn that there are different, what we perceive as colors, but different heat of those stars in different parts. And I can't tell you what she's doing in the other picture because I mean, I think they're working on a Raspberry Apple Pie to put it together, but I just wanted to show off her wonderful laugh, that laughing is frequent and just part of, working with her is just being is the enthusiasm that she brings. And
She brings the joy.
mm-hmm.
These are wonderful. And I'm going to ask you a question that if Wanda was here, I would ask her, but she's not. So I'm asking you, what is a Raspberry Pi?
It is a small, it's made by Apple, which is why it's called Raspberry, because they're just going with the fruit. And it's a very small computer that can't do all that much. Has much less than my phone can do. So it could record hot or cold. It could record, probably can actually record a temperature or an altitude with a pressure gauge, but it isn't that smart a computer. So robotics teams use them all the time to go forward or go back.
Awesome, thank you.
I have one that my brother programmed with a bunch of retro video games. So.
And if somebody tells me I'm wrong, it's not made by Apple. I just knew it went by the fruit theme. I just assumed it was, but maybe I'm wrong, and so wouldn't want Apple getting mad at me.
Thanks. Thank you.
I wanted to just point out the idea that she doesn't do advocacy work as a person who, my existence is political. I feel like that's probably the same. And that like when you do work that supports and innovates on behalf of marginalized people, that's advocacy work. You don't have to be like testifying before Congress to be doing that kind
right.
of work.
And what she wants, she also is a scientist and studying the stars still. So she wants to be careful to not get herself shoehorned into one or only one position. And that's a little tricky because, if people think of you as only running programs for other people, then you don't get to do your own research. So that's a little bit where I don't think of myself as an advocate. Well, you are. She is, but she is also a scientist, or maybe she is a scientist who is also an advocate.
One of the things it's kind of a non sequitur, but it's really, really important. This book is super beautiful, and can we talk about the illustrator?
Rocio is from northern Mexico. I have not met her. That is standard for children's book publishing. I talked to her twice on Instagram just to say hello. And she worked from the few images I had that Wanda's family found of when Wanda was little, and then, the rainforest is still there. It's so you're working. So she worked from photos, but she did a marvelous job. That is, you feel like you have the child right there that you're following, and she is the most important thing on the page. And so I feel like we get Wanda's wonder by these when the meteor shower happens and the sparking inside of her, that it just It's not it's not doing a portrait, it's not doing a cartoon, it's between that. I mean, it is a picture book, obviously, but it's a style of art that just, blows my mind and is great.
It's magic. It is
Yes.
magic. The story, the story and the images together, it is really like it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I want to share. I'm going to give this back to Audrey and Tiana to ask some questions in just a second, but I'm going to share some more words from Wanda first. We asked Wanda a question about challenges. We said, what are the challenges of working in a career that people usually only think of as a site-oriented position? And she answered the social expectations. She wrote, they share knowledge between themselves, and I have to believe without proof available to my senses what their scientific findings are. On the other hand, I have to bring sounds and show visual displays and justify my scientific findings in order for them to believe my scientific results. It's a great challenge because during conferences, there's contemporary happenings, and it reproduces times when other perceptual modalities of exploration were not available, meaning the times before I explored my first gamma ray data set. The mindset has been changing, and 25 years later, I just choose to arrive into conferences, play the audio of the data only if they display their results multisensorily, and I display mine multisensorily. I do it out of compassion. Scientific stakeholders learn to explore information visually. Unwittingly, they do not know how to use multisensorial perception to explore information. They also haven't had the time to bring it to science as an autonomous part of data analysis in a way that scientists can choose how to display and analyze. Amy, I'm just going to mute you for a second. I'm picking something up, and then I'll finish this question if I can. Audrey, can you do that? Can you mute Amy for me just for a second? Sorry. We're getting some kind of weird feedback. I'm not sure what it is. Sorry. So, so scientific stakeholders learn to explore information visually. Unwittingly, they did not know how to use multisensorial perception to explore information. They also haven't had the time to bring it to science as an autonomous part of data analysis in a way that scientists can choose how to display and analyze the required measurements. Because decisions in science are based on what stakeholders think is possible versus what they think is impossible, this becomes a huge challenge because it stops multisensorial perception from being included as a mandatory part of all mission proposals. And it's always diverted to education and people's outreach. And it's been a huge challenge over the decades. And we've been working on it as multisensorality, as proven by my team, brings adaptive mathematical basis of expansion to the data that are not computationally, I'm so sorry, it's because I don't know how to pronounce these wonderful words, computationally expansive. And also as an addition, it may open inclusion for all types of performance to participate in at-will scientific research. So I think that is such a critical answer. I'm so glad that she spent the time to give us this in-depth answer about, particularly like when she talks about, hey, I have to prove to people that my data counts, but I'm expected to just assume and believe in their data. And Amy, can you, and I know that you do not work for NASA, I understand that, but are you able to just kind of talk a little bit more about this, your thoughts on this?
We are trained from very young to display our answers visually. So unless you are going into music, you do not think in terms of sound as far as how are you going to present your answers to somebody else. And it is a mindset that I don't, it overwhelms my thought process to say, oh, we could get people to think differently. Maybe we can, but it's just a kind of an overwhelming idea. And yet it would be, an amazing success if we did, because people hear things differently than what you see. And if you can have teams of scientists studying, I mean, the data sets are huge, so you could have people studying various pieces in different ways. And it's true that how does a scientist who doesn't understand using sound understand if it's good or not? Because, you know, journals want to understand what exactly they're publishing. So it is a big problem that I don't know how to address. And there are many scientists I know who work with at least sonification in the background of what else they're doing. They still primarily work in visuals, but it is at least in the background now, so it's a little bit better.
Amy, I have a question about how we experience the book itself, because now I'm thinking it's still a visual medium.
It is.
We
It
still
is.
have a picture
The
book.
irony is right, it, you know, smacks me in the face all the time. I wrote a picture book about a blind lady, and she can't see it, but that is my medium. That's what I've trained in as far as writing and page turns, and, you know, the speed of how fast one reads different sentences, that you speed up and slow down the story as you go through. And so listening to it, there is a audio version out. Is good, and I wish that there could have been some sound effects put in there that I wasn't in charge. I really like the voice of the actor, but I was, you know, I would have put sound effects so you could actually hear some of these things. Wanda asks her audiences to close their eyes while she's describing her trip into space. I mean, it's using data, but it's a trip to listen, and then you try to see if you can get your brain to understand exactly what she's hearing. And I think it would be very fun to have a picture book where we could push the button and hear what's going on. I know they're expensive to create, and but someday.
I do think that one of the things that I think is just fantastic is one of the things we talked about since the pandemic is broadening accessibility to those with disabilities, challenges, things. It enhances the world for all of us, and it in ways that we don't even imagine. And I think it's really kind of brilliant, though, that, like, you know, most of us, well, I'll just say most of us, you know, grew up listening to stories, and this is a perfect book to read and out loud, and you can add your own. And I think that that's something that is always, to me, the better story. So maybe we could get Wanda to come and read her story to us. But I do think I would be really curious to know the things that she would have used in terms of the sounds that she would use to not only the data from space, but you have like the little
cookie frogs.
Yes, the frogs. And I keep thinking about the cicadas because they're out. It's summer, and you can kind of hear them in the background of Amy just a little bit. But it's just kind of really cool to me that people don't always see the world or think about the world in sound. And as a historian, I'm always fascinated by people who like to bring that out, because lived experiences happen with sound and light and
right.
things happening. And we often don't think of those things. And I think it's really kind of brilliant that not only your book talks about that, but like the pictures really do a lot to kind of help us. But I think we could probably get some sound effects in there. And
well, and she went to Asteroid Day, which is held in Luxembourg, or at least it was this year. It may move around. It's sponsored by Brian May, who is an astrophysicist and also the Queen rocker. So she was one of the guest speakers there, and she was taken to a school for the blind or in Luxembourg where somebody read her book, and she and her niece provided the background sound. So when we talk about the Coqui frogs, she and her niece played recordings of the frogs, and then she played recordings of all the data she heard. And unfortunately, because it's not the medium these kids would work in, nobody videoed it, so I don't have a copy. But I did talk to people saying it was wonderful, and I really want a copy. I mean, I really wanted to see it. I was invited a week before it started, but it was, yeah, couldn't get there. But it would, and they also, they had simultaneous translation into Luxembourgish, because even though most kids will learn English, blind kids learn it more slowly, and so they had to go to the. So it took an hour to go through the book, which takes 10 minutes to read out loud if you're going straight through.
Wow.
I would have liked to be there.
I
Great
agree.
that they made the effort. I mean,
Yeah.
that is just so fantastic. And for those who were there to witness that, I bet was really special.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think hearing it and hearing those sounds and or imagine. And I like this idea, Audrey, your idea of reading out loud and adding how we might add the sound effects ourselves and imagine it. We have one more question that we asked Wanda. I want to make sure we get this in here. We asked Wanda about Puerto Rico, and we wrote to her. We said, "You live in Puerto Rico. Talk to us about that location and NASA and space work in general in Puerto Rico. Is there a lot going on?" And she responded, and she said, "Sadly, there's not much happening in Puerto Rico." She wrote, "The things happening are contained among a selected number of people, and when expanded to others outside of that selected group, things are monosensorial. And if they're presented using other sensorial styles, they do not preserve the same amount or the quality of information that's displayed visually. The only meaningful event happening was the experience that she previously, we talked about previously, that she was part of in July of 2025. She said, besides that, the current explorations are around the same mathematical, unadaptive methods of expansion, which are buffering a lot of scientific important information." And I was thinking, as we reflect on those words and the words we've heard from Wanda, that one of the things for all of us to think about, including all of our viewers and us, is what are the ways that we are recreating these limitations? And what are ways that we can try to be more creative and be open to being creative about communicating in multiple ways as we do our work, whatever our work is.
Because you don't know what you're missing out. I mean, that's the thing. You don't, you think in science, science is usually very expansive. And I think, we're seeing now that funding is disappearing, and, it's just, you just wonder, what are we missing? And so advocating for that and making sure that we're, she talks about consistently, this fully investigating thing, I think is really important.
So she is the new science director of, I'm going to get this wrong, Science in Braille, which is sponsored in part by the Royal Academy of Sciences International. And I haven't managed to talk to her since she took that on, if that means she's moving somewhere else or if she's staying in Puerto Rico. And it's I know by their website that it's an international group, but you may have already dropped the link in the chat, but so it is where her next big pushes are, as far as they are working on presenting science in multi-sensory ways, and have a whole list of events on their website of what they're doing. And but you're right that I thought in my medium, I mean, I write, I write picture books. I write books for older kids too, or and I sometimes write early readers, but I know how books work. I sort of know how plays work, but I sure don't know how um, to do all of the things at once. And I suppose one could do video, but it's still not the same. It's not video is very much visual oriented too. So yeah.
Um, I had a question about publishing,
Mm,
right? So this book came out a week ago or 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks ago. Yep.
2 weeks ago. So what is what has launch been like for you? And then also, how does launching book number 36 differ from launching your first one? Like, is it easier? Does it change at all?
Launch has been good. It's very busy. This is by far the most, I want to say most important, but also most, it's a very different book than all my other books. I mean, I have a fair number of series of how does a windmill work? How does solar panels work? And I studied that. I can write it for third graders, and writing about nuclear energy for third graders was very hard, but I did it. Um, but nobody's really going to care when those came out. I mean, they go directly to the library shelves, they get taken out, but their actual launch is not that big a deal. I have a few other trade picture books, but again, they're 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 not. I mean, I care, but nobody else is going to jump up and down. This is such a hero's story that it's Wanda is a force of life that everybody should know about, and I want it to do really well for me, obviously, but for it touches an awful lot of other people. And when I read it to a friend of mine who is visually impaired, I was somewhat shocked when she started crying at the point where Wanda becomes an independent adult again. It's before the science, before she figures out that she can go back into science. But she has gone through the training and found herself saying, "Okay, I can be an adult, and I can earn a living in doing some other work." And that's where my friend who is visually impaired started crying.
Same.
And that wasn't the point that I thought in the writing was going to get people choked up. It was a couple pages later when she realizes she can still do the science is, but yeah, for somebody who has lost that independence, getting it back is huge. And, so
Amy, I'm just going to say right off our library has quite a few of your books, and
yeah.
I'm just, looking at the catalog, and I see Floating and Sinking, and I think of my nephew who is his favorite activity. And I love how your work helps us to explore our world. I think it's one of those things that, like, children right now, are at this kind of crossroads of, like, how do you wander? How do you explore when your parents are 2 seconds away from you at all times? It's a different childhood than a lot of us grew up with, but I think it's really important to put books out there that help kids explore their world and to, like, challenge them to see and to know, because it's it's just we're, like I said, we're in a really different world, and I think it's really great. So please don't downplay your books, because they are super, super, super great. And speaking for my nephew, Sinking and Floating is like his favorite game. So
Well, and I like to write about things I don't know. So the Bugs and Bugsicles was my first big book. So where do insects go in the wintertime? And I thought, well, I'll just go to the library and find out. But you know what? There was not a book out there, and I was a science writer, so I said, I'll write this book. And the real reason there was not a book is that it's different for each insect. So if you got a book out on ants, you would have found out where the ants go, but where all the bugs in general go. I had to write it's not quite a DK book with the little bitty pieces, but I wrote, a different blurb about moths or about butterflies, about dragonflies, because they go different places for the winter. And I like exploring. That's what I like the research. I like the, I eventually like the writing, but the research is great fun.
So we're getting to the end of our time. I have one final question for you. What is next? What's Amy doing next?
What is it? Oh gosh, I really ought to have that prepared, shouldn't I? Amy is. I have some plays out, which is good, but not picture book stuff, and I am pitching other life mysteries. So for especially for little kids, what is under my feet? If you go down the first 10 feet or so into the soil, it's a lot. The soil is essentially alive. I mean, some of it's rocks, but what's down there in different ecosystems. So under my feet in a swamp, under my feet in a forest, under my feet, and we'll see if that goes anywhere. It includes it. I set it in different national parks all over the country, so I think it should. But yeah,
That's super exciting. That is super exciting. Okay, so unfortunately, we're out of time. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you with us, Amy. Thank you so much. We're to Wanda, we're so glad that we were able to share your words and part of your story. To both of you, what a beautiful book. Just fantastic. Look at it. It's glowing, glistening. Wanda Hears the Stars. Thank you for bringing this to all of us, telling us diverse stories, celebrating the richness that makes us who we are is so important and a critical part of my work. And this book made me tear up. It's just wonderful. Good. Thank you also to the Office of Human Rights and Prince George's County Memorial Library System for including Joe's Movement Emporium in this today as part of the ongoing Freedom Stories collaboration between our agencies. For those of you who are watching right now, this wonderful book came out 2 weeks ago today. So if you hadn't had the chance to read it yet, go right now or like later today or maybe like tomorrow and get it from your favorite independent bookstore for yourself, for the child in your life. But like literally
or the library.
Or you can also get it from the PG County Memorial Library Service or whatever your local library system is. If they don't have it, ask them to get it. We here at Joe's invite you to check out all we have going on, because I guess it's a shameless plug moment. You can visit joesmovement.org, or you can visit our friends at the library at pgcmls.info and the Office of Human Rights at civilrights.mypgc.us. Again, thank you, Amy, and to Wanda for sharing the story and for your words and time in bringing this event to us today. I hope that I will see you all again soon. Thank you.